Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Social Media for Economic Development. My name is Lauren Gilchrist, and I'll be your host today from C2ER, the Council for Community and Economic Research. I'd like to introduce our two presenters to you today, Anatolio Ubalde and Eric Simonza of GIS Planning. Anatolio Ubalde is co-CEO and co-founder of GIS Planning. His work in geographic information systems, economic development, and the internet has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg Businessweek, Forbes, and Inc. magazine. He is a previous recipient of the International Economic Development Council Outstanding New Economic Developer of the Year Award, is a member of the board of directors there, and in 2009 was named a fellow member of IEDC for achieving exceptional stature in the field of economic development. Mr. Ubalde has also accepted the Coronet Global Economic Development Leadership and Accomplishment Award for GIS Planning. He has received awards from the Council for Urban Economic Development, American Economic Development Council, American Planning Association, and was featured in the U.S. Department of Commerce's Innovative Local Economic Development Programs publication. He has a master's degree in city planning from UC Berkeley. Eric Simonza is a product manager at GIS Planning. He has worked in economic development in the service of small businesses for over 10 years. He has consulted with business improvement districts and managed multi-million-dollar employment service contracts. He currently manages the national site selection website zoomprospector.com as well as sizeup.com, a free business intelligence website that launched in September at TechCrunch Disrupt, where it was one of 30 finalists out of over 1,200 applicants. Eric also has a master's degree in city and regional planning from UC Berkeley. With that, I'd like to welcome our presenters and turn over the presentation to them.
Okay, hi. Well, thanks, Lauren. And first, I just want to thank C2ER for inviting us to present today. So we've got a lot of information to go through on how social media can be used for economic development. But first, I want to give you some highlights of a recent survey that we performed around this topic. So just as a way of context, back in the summer of 2007, this is when everything kind of seemed so bright and sunny. We surveyed economic development organizations to see what marketing strategies they were using, how they were allocating their budgets among them, and how they perceived their effectiveness. And the results were published next year in the book Economic Development Marketing, Present and Future. So in 2009, at the depths of the economic slump, we distributed a brief follow-up survey to see specifically how the budgets and attitudes of EDOs had changed in light of the downturn. So now in 2011, the economic climate is still a bit murky, but there are some bright spots, and EDOs are beginning to ramp up their activities again. So as it had been a full 4 years after our first comprehensive survey, we felt it was time to revisit the state of economic development marketing, and we had a few big questions we wanted to answer. So we wanted to see what has changed since the downturn, how are communities, EDOs, and site selectors responding, and what's the impact that social media is having on marketing and communication. So once the results were in, we found that websites continue to be the most effective marketing strategy for economic development. 82% of respondents rated that as an effective strategy. And you can also see a little further down the list, social media ranked at 47% found this effective. This wasn't even a choice in our last comprehensive survey. So that's certainly a significant showing. So now there's a lot happening in this chart. But what you can see, there are three distinct points for 2007, 2009, and 2011. This shows the change in the perceived effectiveness of marketing strategies over time. And you can see a very distinct V-shape for most of these strategies. So what was happening was in 2009, there was a real drop. People were really pessimistic about most of these strategies. And this really did coincide with when they were slashing their budgets for marketing. So it's kind of maybe an indication that they're rationalizing the cuts they were making. But now in 2011, we can see that most of the perceived effectiveness has rebounded for just about every strategy to the point that it's actually higher than it was in 2007. For social media, this was something we just started tracking in 2009, but you can see that it had one of the more dramatic increases over the past 2 years in terms of perceived effectiveness. So yeah, now we're going to look at budgets. So EDOs gave their highest budget allocation to websites. And while this position was not a change from the last survey, the actual percentage of the budget given to websites has risen slightly. And then further down the list, social media you can see the average budget allocation was only 3%. This was ranked 15th, but it received the 7th highest effectiveness rating. So what this kind of shows is that social media does not need much of a capital investment to be effective. So this next slide here, we look at what budget items the EDOs plan to increase in the next 5 years and what they plan to decrease. And you can see that over 70% of EDOs anticipated that they would increase their spending on websites in the next 5 years. The only other marketing strategy to have the majority of EDOs planning to increase their spending was for social media. So here we take a look at specific website features. So we're now looking at websites. And the green is what EDOs say they currently have, and the blue is what they plan to implement within 5 years. So you can see down the list where we have social media integration. 56% of EDOs have social media integrated into their websites now, and 28% plan to implement this within 5 years. And that's of all planned implementations, that's the third highest of all website features. So now I'm going to shift and give a little bit of background on the evolution of media. So the old way of media, with some things like TV and newspapers, is where there's a message and they're sending it to you. And so it's a form of communication that's one way because you can't respond back. And then in Web 2.0, this is where people start to be posting comments on web pages and blogs, and there really is some two-way communication. And then after that, we have social media, and this really brings these kind of two-way interactions to another level because you're allowing for people to easily contact those people that are specifically in their social networks in ways that weren't possible. So it's kind of like Web 2.0 on steroids. And then after that, we're in age of Web 3.0 is otherwise known as the semantic web. It's not really the focus of this talk, but I'll just touch on it to say that it builds upon the elements of what came before it, but it's more data-driven. It's where computers are interpreting more information and often acting on it on your behalf. So here we have an image that comes from a tool that allows you to graph your social network. So here we see an example of a social graph, and you can see that there are different clusters. It's not evenly distributed. You have these clusters may be your friends from work or high school or other groups, and these clusters may be connected, but they don't necessarily have to be. And it's useful to think about these clusters and their power when you are using social media. So here we see where people are spending their time on the internet, and you can see that people are spending time on social networks and blogs more than any other activity. This category is also growing the fastest with a 43% increase in time spent from 2009 to 2010. So now I'm going to shift back. We'll look at some more of our own survey results. We asked which social media strategies EDOs engage in, and we found that 73% have Facebook pages, 58% have Twitter accounts, 56% have a LinkedIn group, and 50% have video sharing. So these are the strategies used by the majority of EDOs. But it's not enough to create a social media account. To get any real benefit out of social media presence, it's important to engage frequently and make use of its real-time nature. We found that 20% of economic developers use Facebook and Twitter on a daily basis, and 15% used LinkedIn. So these numbers are somewhat low and could certainly stand to increase. Okay, just trying to advance here. Okay, so when asked to rate which communication strategies for economic development were most effective, economic developers gave the highest ratings to LinkedIn, followed by Facebook, video sharing, and Twitter. And it's interesting to note that these effectiveness ratings, they're considerably lower than the percentages of EDOs that are engaging in the strategies. So there's some skepticism about the effectiveness of these channels among the people that are engaging in them. So we should keep in mind when looking at these results that we're still at an early adoption stage for these strategies. And as EDOs become more comfortable and proficient in these strategies, and as the business community's involvement on these platforms grows, we expect EDOs to have more success with social media. So we also conducted a separate survey of site selectors and asked how they use social media. So I'm just going to give you a few highlights from that survey. We found that site selectors spend 23 minutes per day engaging with social media for work, which was slightly less than for economic developers. We found that 61% of site selectors agreed with the statement that social media will grow in importance in their jobs in the coming years. so we definitely anticipate this will be more important. And we also found that site selectors utilize LinkedIn and blogs more than EDOs, so kind of hints that EDOs may have a little bit of catch-up to do in that for those particular strategies. So that's kind of a big picture idea of how EDOs are using social media. And now I'm going to turn it over to Natalia. He's going to give you some more detail on some more specific strategies.
Thanks, Eric. That's great information. Of the survey, this is one of the things that surprised me the most was, I thought that perhaps economic development organizations or maybe site selectors, maybe they were spending 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes on social media, but in fact, it's a pretty significant part of their day, the people who are actually involved. So let's talk in terms of the trends, in terms of what's actually, some of the powerful trends in communication and how social media plays into this. So, for example, the way that economic developers have traditionally tried to reach businesses and influence them were through two main strategies. One is to reach the most powerful influencers. They're reaching them through traditional public relations. And this is trying to get into things like the Wall Street Journal or Business Week or Inc. magazine, things like this. Of course, the challenge with this is that it's very hard to get into these publications and you can't control the message. The other way to control the message for economic development organizations that have huge budgets is they try to do mass marketing. But there's big challenges with that because we as economic developers, we're competing with huge companies that have big budgets. So we were just a little bit of noise in a sea of advertising. But the new opportunity for us is in what I talk about in my book called, which we call the magic middle. And this is the opportunity where we are influencing the influencers. And the word of mouth impact moves up to the decision makers. And online and through social media is a terrific way to influence the thought leaders, domain experts, and community fire starters. The other important concept is that we're able to, through online communications, reach businesses at the moment of relevance. This is exactly when they're looking for a solution. So here are three things that you better get used to. The first is that information is real time. Social media has made this even more so because all of the media, it's not happening on being published every 24 hours. It's getting published every hour, every minute along the cycle. And the expectation that economic developers get back to businesses is in real time. The second issue is there's a loss of control. I would say more old-fashioned economic developers have tried to hold on and say, I'm going to control what people are talking about in terms of my community, or that I will be the one that will shape how my community is marketed. Well, now with social media, everybody has a bullhorn to tell their story. So as economic developers, we have the choice. We can either engage in the conversations that are happening, or they're just going to happen without us. Another major trend is that communication is a team effort. Marketing directors can no longer do all of the marketing. It requires the work from everyone from the CEO to the intern, and everybody's voice is valuable. And it's not just internal, it also includes the marketing team of CEOs and other businesses within the community that are sharing your story. Now I'll talk about, put it in order in terms of what people are using. Let's first talk about Facebook for economic development. Facebook, when you look at the sheer numbers, and the numbers are much bigger than this. This is the last time that they really talked about the numbers, but I've recently heard they're up to 750 million users of Facebook. They just dwarf the other social networks. And here you can see just how quickly they've grown. And people have said, well, this Facebook is just for kids. Well, no, in fact, even the seniors are doing it. One of the mistakes that a lot of economic development organizations make is they ask people to friend our organizations. There's a difference. People have profiles, and businesses and economic development organizations have pages. So this is an example of my personal profile on Facebook. This is what a Facebook page for an economic development organization looks like. You can see elements of that, which I'll show you in a sec. This is how you create a Facebook page. If you're not logged in, you go to the Facebook homepage. At the bottom, it says create a page for a celebrity, band, or business. And that's what we fit in under. Yes, you could consider us we're the Celebrity Economic Development Organizations. So you just click on that. It takes a few minutes, and you can create a page. Let me show you some of the elements of a page. So this is the organization's logo. There's contact information. There's the number of people who like the organization. And that's the button that will increase that number of people click on it. And these are links. They used to be called tabs, but now they're on the left-hand side and they're links. And this is the wall, similar to your personal profile on Facebook. This is the organization's wall. These are some of the things that you can share to engage your audience. So you can invite people to a networking event. You can actually invite information. So this is a way where they're doing real-time market analysis. They're saying, you know, what retail does Oklahoma City need? Let's get some discussion going. Again, this is real-time. Or here, they're inviting people to an event sponsored by the organization. And they can add that event directly to their personal calendar within Facebook. It's all integrated so they can just click and it happens. Here in Wyoming, see that they just posted an available job. And here's something really great where this company, they actually posted a thank you to the Economic Development Corporation, saying we really appreciate the recognition that they gave, that the Laramie EDC gave them in their newsletter. And here they're sharing positive news such as their tax-friendly climate. You can also post photos. Here's a great one where somebody posted a question on their wall saying, what are business missions? What do you do? And that provides them an opportunity to respond, to educate people about what economic development is and what they're doing in their organization. And here they explained, you know, business missions allow them to meet with companies that have an interest in North Carolina or the Charlotte region. And we also meet with major site consultants. You can also post videos. Now through links you can add additional information. So these are links that they've uploaded to Facebook. You can also add photos and events. So this is a calendar of things that people can sign up for. People can also subscribe to RSS feeds for their blog. And here's a great one. It's very simple. It's just saying, hey, sign up for our emails. This is permission-based marketing so that people can say, yes, I'd like to get more information about the Anchorage EDC. I enter in my information, and now the EDO has permission to send them emails without spamming them. This one I thought was pretty interesting. They actually have a music link, and in the state of Michigan, they have a Buy Michigan song. So for those of you who want to add the Buy Michigan song to your playlist, you can go there to Saginaw Future. You can also add demographics and also properties if there's properties available. Here are 3 ways you can improve your Facebook page. First is to claim your vanity URL. You can see up here at the top that it's facebook.com/LincolnEDA. That's a much easier way for people to find your page, or for you to tell people how to find your page, than having facebook.com/x432abc. And it's easy to do. You can also use a custom landing tab using Facebook markup language, and now they're actually enabling other ways to do it. So this is Georgia's. Now their landing page doesn't look anything like a lot of those pages that I showed you before because they've customized it. So you can watch a video and they have additional content. Charlotte asked people to sign up for email. And they also say, here, this, we're awesome, and it's the #1 reason to like our page. What they're trying to do is get people to click on that like button so that Charlotte's content will be part of their feed. Another option is to add Facebook apps. There are many different Facebook apps that exist. Some are simple ones like playing games or calendars or things like that. But there are 2 that have been developed for economic development, and in full disclosure, these are ones that we've developed. However, they're free, so it's not something that will cost you anything. And I just want to show them because they are designed specifically for economic development. You can add demographics. For any of your cities or counties, we have data, and all you have to do is sign up to download that app. And you can see in this case, for New Braunfels, they're able to have information about their people, labor force, entrepreneurship, budgets, and so on. If we have property information for your organization, you can also add property data. Okay, now let's talk about LinkedIn. Now, you probably thought, well, actually, I'm sorry. First, let me give you a little bit of background about LinkedIn. It's worldwide. Executives from all Fortune 500 companies are on LinkedIn. It's a very affluent group of people who are on LinkedIn, and 45% are business decision makers. This is the CEO of LinkedIn. He talks about how everyone is now an entrepreneur, whether they recognize it or not. In fact, for everybody who's on this call, that the job that you're in right now is not the last job of your life, you fall into this category. You too are an entrepreneur because you are going to be marketing the company you. And while you might have thought that this webinar was just going to be about what to do for your organization, I also want to talk about how you can use LinkedIn for your own professional development. So let's start with you as an entrepreneur. There are 2 ways that you might find your next job. One, it could be passive or it could be proactive. Through technologies like LinkedIn, people can actually find you. So let's say that you are somebody that has exactly the right resume for the type of economic development research job that they're looking for. Now, maybe the person who's hiring doesn't know you, but through LinkedIn, they can see how they're connected to you. And not only that, they can talk to the people who know you to see what they think about you and if you would be a good fit for the job. You can also turn this around, so you could be proactive. Let's say you find an organization that you're really interested in working for, and what you do is you see how you are linked to the person who is making the hiring decision. Well, you could talk to your link to make an introduction to that person, or have them talk to their connection on your behalf. This is an example of a LinkedIn profile. This is my profile. At the top, there's basic information, where I work, where I went to school, a summary about who I am and what I've done. Down below, you can see additional information, such as where I've worked, the skills I have, the books I've written, where I've gone to school. These are recommendations. I'll talk about recommendations a little bit more, but these are people who've had something positive to say about what the experience has been like working with me. And down below, the LinkedIn groups that I'm a part of and honors and awards that I have. Here's why you should add information for connectability. The more you add, where you've gone to school or where you've worked or the activities you're involved with, there's more opportunities for connections. And those more connections create an increased probability of you being seen. Like I mentioned in the previous section, you can also add a custom URL for your LinkedIn profile. And there's a link within your profile so that you can do that. So for example, in mine, instead of it being linkedin.com/in/432xyz, it actually says my name. You might say, well, what does that mean? How will that really help me as a professional? Well, if you do a Google search on me, you'll find out that LinkedIn actually shows up 1, 2, 3, is the 4th link, and it's there showing my name. So that can create value and more visibility for you. Also, for your organizations, from your profile, you can add links to the websites of your company. There are many apps you can add to your profile also. Here's a reason that I would recommend you get and give recommendations is because it helps how people perceive you. And these are some of the people that you can get and give recommendations to: former managers, colleagues and coworkers, customers and clients, and business partners. This is going to be especially valuable to you or your colleagues at your organization who are doing business in targeted industries, because as you talk to more people in those targeted industries, they're going to see that people within their industry, their peers, have a good feeling toward working with you. So that's you as an entrepreneur. Now let's talk about your organization. This is an example of a company's profile on LinkedIn, and I would encourage all of you, if you do not have one, to add one. It's very easy to do. You actually see right here when you're under the company section, add company, you can add yours if it's not already in there. But this is an example of a good one. It has a logo. It has an overview of what their organization does. You can see who are working there, and there's even demographic information about the organization. Here's another one, similar. It has very good information about the economic development organization. The Cincinnati, USA Regional Chamber has one of the biggest LinkedIn groups of any economic development organization, but the time that I searched for them for their company profile, it didn't exist. So that's a lost opportunity. This is what happens when I typed in North Dakota Department of Commerce. They don't have a profile, and so you see all it does is bring up the people who work there. There's no profile. And it's not a reflection of whether they're a good or bad organization. In fact, I know the folks there. They're a very good organization. It's just they don't have a profile. Another opportunity for you is to join groups for both business attraction and expansion. Whatever industry targets your organization is going after, there is a LinkedIn group that's a great match for you. So if you're targeting biotech, there's 1,024 LinkedIn groups that's a great match. And also a lot of economic developers aren't doing this. They're not actually joining these groups. So there's very little competition for you to be the expert in explaining why it is that your community is a great location for businesses to start up, expand, or relocate. Here's another example. For plastics, there's 269 groups within LinkedIn. I'll show you a way on how some economic developers are leveraging the value of LinkedIn. And this is a tool that was developed by a company called Whitaker Associates. And they're using it to connect LinkedIn to the economic development organization's target list of companies that they're trying to reach to make an investment in their community. And what you see here is that, if they're targeting General Atomics, by clicking on the LinkedIn profile tool, you can actually see who you're connected to or how far away you're connected to them. So perhaps you don't have a direct link to them, but somebody you know knows them. That's a much easier way to make a call into them by saying, hi Joe, I know Sally and I know you know Sally, and I wanted to talk to you about our community. And this is, once you click through there, you can actually see how you're connected and what the shared connections are. Now let's talk about your community. So you can create your own group. It's very simple to do. And this is a great tool for internal conversations about what's going on in your area. This is an example from the Metro Denver Chamber, or I'm sorry, the Metro Denver EDC, and you can see the type of information that they're talking about. They're talking about things like the 15 Colorado companies on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing list, or that they're accepting nominations for the 50 for Colorado Leadership Program. All of this information is local and provides an opportunity to engage with your local businesses. And sometimes businesses outside of your area that are considering an investment may also join your groups. Now let's talk about you, the economic developer. So there are ways that you can use LinkedIn to help yourself in the daily work that you do, and also to improve your status within the profession. So under groups, you can type in things such as economic development. And these are the 3 largest economic development groups on LinkedIn. It's the Economic Development Professionals, Economic Development Leadership, and the International Economic Development Council. The second largest one is one that we control. I can't promise you that you can get into the other 2 groups, but if you're interested in joining ours, you're welcome to. I also did a search, and you can see that C2ER also has 2 groups. So these are great ones that, that you can join to engage with your colleagues within C2ER. This is what it looks like before you join a group. So you can see which of the people that you're connected to are already in that group. Once you've joined, you can see the information within. So you can see these are questions that economic developers are asking. Has anyone developed a webinar to site selectors as opposed to face-to-face meetings? And then 20 people responded to her question. Now, what incentives is your community using for business retention efforts? These are all questions, and your colleagues can solve they can provide answers to the questions that you have and help you out. These are just some more examples of the types of questions and posts that are happening within these groups. Now, there's a very good reason of why you should, what you personally get from posting and responding is, and for all of you who are on LinkedIn, you probably see this yourself, is the posts get sent to you in your inbox. And in those posts, it actually shows who's responding. Well, that's high value to you because thousands of your peers see your name and your knowledge. They see you as an expert, and that has value to you because when they're looking for an expert they want to hire, your name can be top of mind, which brings us full circle back to you as an entrepreneur. So through these different types of ways of engaging LinkedIn, it helps your organization, your community, and yourself. Now let's talk about Twitter. Now Twitter is one of the types of social media that a lot of people understand the least. But that's also part of what makes it very successful is this kind of uniqueness about it. So Twitter launched on 2006. There's many people using it. I'm sure you hear people talking about it on TV, or you have friends who are talking about it. You're starting to see things like hashtags. So let me show you some of the elements of Twitter. So it's real-time information. It's considered a microblog. You can tweet 140 characters or less, and you can have a profile that's less than 160 characters. The @ symbol, like email, is when you're talking to someone or about somebody. Whatever their address or their profile is, comes after an @. So for example, ours could be @GIS planning. The hashtag you use when you're talking about a specific subject. So if you're talking about economic development, you might use #EconDev. Twitter's grown immensely fast, and you see it's had hockey stick type of growth. This is a Twitter page, and you can see some of the elements of that page. This is the @ handle, the name, location, a small description of the organization, how many are following, the number of followers, and if they're on any lists. This is where you type in your tweet under what's happening, and the number above that you see here is the number of characters you have left to type. You can only use 140. Here, if you under search, you actually type in the hashtag economic development, you can see what people are talking about as it relates to economic development. So that's a way of searching on topics. So if you're doing research and you're trying to find out what people are talking about around a particular topic, you can just enter in the hashtag, which is the number sign, and then whatever topic you're interested in. Twitter can also give you suggestions about who you might want to follow. This one is funny. As I was actually putting this presentation together, or this set of slides, this is a slide that I had, I've probably been using for a year or so. And the funny part about it, this is that David Zack is a guy who introduced me for a speech that I gave this week in Ohio. So I guess Twitter realized at some point I was going to get to know this guy. Here are 5 ways your organizations can use Twitter. First is you can share positive information about your community and its business climate. In this case, we're talking Metro Denver saying the solar energy system just opened up a new office in Denver. Another example of a loan that was given out in the state of Massachusetts, or in Northeast Indiana, how they were ranked 8th in business climate by Site Selection magazine. You can also take part in conversations. So in this case, Nexam said, it was a great event, Massachusetts Economic Development, an excellent speech. We're honored to receive the award. Mass Econ responds, this company had 200% job growth in the past 2 years. So what they're doing is they're creating social capital within each other by promoting each other. And they're doing it through conversations. You can also take part in conversations. So in this case, we're saying, way to go on winning your IEDC award. And they respond saying, thanks. We also got a general website award. You can also start conversations. So let's say that you're trying to do research and say, what skills do your employers need? Would our community college providing that training be helpful? This is a way you can get real-time market research and analysis. You can also generate social capital. This is an example of someone who, I've never met, but who retweeted an article about us that was in Inc. magazine. So obviously, if this guy contacts me in the future, I'm more likely to respond to him. Here you can promote businesses from within your community. In this case, the Retreat at Central Texas Marketplace will host a ribbon cutting. So this is for a new business that's opening. Here's some other examples. Check out this article about our newest tenant in the downtown center. And also don't miss another ribbon cutting tomorrow at Jay's Bistro. With all the social media, please also understand that social media exists within a context that is, it's not always just online. This is an example of a project that was promoted by DCI. They were hired by Chattanooga and to do PR for them. And they got this article into the New York Times about the fastest net service in the U.S. coming to Chattanooga. So it existed in a print publication that also had the article online. And because it was online, it could be retweeted. And this is how many people within 24 hours through the internet, through Twitter, it had 9.8 million impressions. That's a great way of having a combination of offline and online strategies. Now I'll share with you what not to do on Twitter, or at least what not to do on Twitter if you want to keep your jobs. This is a pretty unhappy story of an economic development organization that their tweet made it all the way to the Today Show. In fact, it made it all across the country. And it came because they tweeted out that they were leaving early on a Friday because of summer hours and they were going golfing. Well, what happened is that it got picked up by a lot of the media, and in not a very positive way. It resulted in the person who tweeted it out getting fired. But at the local level, so many people were talking about this tweet, and in some very unpleasant ways. Here you can read. So this is a post on the local newspaper from people in the area. So it said, since this was referred to as summer hours, the assumption is LVEDC does not do this the rest of the year. Economic development, it appears, is seasonal. Ouch. You know, a lot of people don't understand what we do in economic development as it is, and so this certainly was not the kind of thing they wanted to see happening. Complaints about taxpayer money going to the organization, and saying, this is another comment, are you kidding, she should have gotten a raise. Well, folks, that's just another example of why this country is collapsing. So the reality is when it comes to Twitter, what you should tweet about is the kind of things that you'd be comfortable saying in public, on the front page of your newspaper, at a city council meeting. You can use a casual style, but be careful about what it is that you post. So this may have left you a little bit confused because it's a wide overview of a lot of issues related to social media, but we wanted to give you a high-level idea about both the concepts and actually things you can do. I'll close this out with a concept which I talked about more in my book, which is about this idea of the SCurve. And everybody who's on this call can benefit from writing other people's SCurve. So as networks grow over time, their value grows. And in some cases, that value can grow incredibly fast. And the networks that are growing so quickly now are social networks. They are the networks like LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and YouTube. All of these are growing quickly. By using them, we don't even have to create an infrastructure. We simply have to ride their S-curve to create more value for economic development. So with that, I will turn it back to any questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you to both Anatalio and Eric. I know I learned a lot through the presentation. Just as a reminder to everyone, if you could submit your questions through the questions box in GoToWebinar, we will try to get to as many as possible during the course of the webinar. And I think we have a couple already lined up, so I'm just going to jump right into them. The first question I have is, are business decision makers on Facebook, are business decision makers on Facebook, or should Facebook be used more for building a community around economic development?
So when you just look at the sheer numbers, if there's three-quarters of a billion people on Facebook, I mean, that's bigger than most of the countries in the world. So there's lots of decision makers on there. I think that Facebook presents a different type of opportunity for engaging businesses. It may be a terrific way, especially to engage local businesses, and it is probably not going to be the type of business attraction tool that so many economic developers are used to focusing on. I also think it's a great people tool. So a lot of economic development organizations are focused on talent attraction, and I think Facebook's a great way to do that. In fact, I've seen some organizations use it specifically as a tool to bring talented people into the community. So with all of these strategies, we're early on and they're all evolving. So I could tell you now that Facebook may not be as successful for business attraction, but that may change. Maybe it will be in the future. Right now I see it as a great tool to connect with people.
Okay, great.
Actually, you know what? I'll even give you a quick story about this. I was talking with an economic developer who said that he would never ever use Facebook for economic development. He thought it was unethical. He thought that that should only be for his friends. And what we see is that a lot of companies are using Facebook to engage customers, but he didn't feel that way. And I said, well, okay, well, how do you use Facebook? He says, well, I have it, for family and friends and then people that I do business with. I said, well, what type of people? He says, even, people that I work with, like site selectors. I said, well, what do you do with them on Facebook? He says, well, I comment on, if they post pictures, or I ask them how they're doing with their family. I'm creating, just conversations with them through Facebook. And he says, and I asked him, have any of these site selectors done business in your community? He says, oh yeah, they return my calls all the time, and sometimes we talk about work and sometimes we talk about personal things. I said, have any of them located any companies in your community? He says, oh yes, they have. So I couldn't have been more confused about this conversation I had with this guy, because he says he never uses Facebook for business, but in fact he's using it incredibly effectively for business. So sometimes when people say, they don't use Facebook for business, I think you've got to ask those follow-up questions.
Okay, great. Here's another question. So for economic developers or other organizations that are new to Facebook, what are the best strategies to use to gain likes on Facebook or to gain followers on Twitter?
So I would encourage you to use some of your existing channels, the people that already have a relationship with you. A good marketing and communication strategy is an integrated one. So there are ways that you can use your existing channels to get people to connect with you on Facebook or Twitter. So if you have, let's say you have an email newsletter, you could announce that you have a new Facebook page and ask people to like you. You could do the same thing on Twitter. You can add that type of information of what your Facebook page address is or your Twitter address is on your business cards or through brochures. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of economic development organizations doing that. So that's a way to get things started. But as you start entering good content through both your Facebook page and your Twitter account, other people will discover you and then like you or follow you. So it's a combination of reaching your existing network and then growing it by providing value, either through comments or the information you post. Another great way is to actually engage. See what other people are talking about your community, and then post things or respond on their walls. And then if they're interested in what you're saying, they're very likely going to like your organization.
Okay, great. So this is kind of on the administrative end of things as well, I guess. How much staff time should you anticipate needing to implement an effective social media strategy?
Well, a few months ago, I wouldn't have been able to give you any numbers associated with that. My view about social media is like any other program, it has to deliver. And if you're getting no return on your investment, you should be spending no time at all on it. If you're getting high value and high return on investment, you may want to consider increasing the amount of time. So there's no perfect answer of saying, well, if you spend 10 minutes, you're going to be doing enough. What we can tell you now, based on the survey, is the amount of time your colleagues are spending. And so the typical economic development organization is spending 24 minutes a day.
26.
I'm sorry, 26 minutes a day. So if you want to benchmark yourself compared to the competition, that's the amount of time they're spending.
So you
by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how much you have to do. If you're a small shop and your organization has very few people, perhaps that's more than you can invest because there's other things you're doing. I would encourage everybody, though, to experiment with social media. Try it and see how much is the right amount of time for you to deliver the results you need.
Okay, so speaking of that as well, you mentioned return on investment. How might you suggest measuring that?
So there are a variety of different ways that you can measure. Some of the really obvious ones with, so for example, with LinkedIn, if you have a group, is you can measure based on the number of people who are joining your group. On Facebook, you could measure based on the number of people who are liking your page. But I think an even better measurement is how many people are engaging with the page. You know, are they responding? Are they commenting? Are you able to have discussions? Twitter has some types of measurements such as clout, where you can see really how much you're influencing people through your Twitter account. However, at the end of the day, you've also got to figure out how much these folks are turning into conversions of businesses that are engaging with your organization. They're actually talking to you, which results in a business investment. So whether it be a business that expands into your area, or business that starts up in your area, or the people that you're attracting to the area. So eventually you've got to connect it to what your organizational goals are.
Okay. The next question I have is related to blogging. How would you suggest integrating blogging, either existing blogging efforts or new blogging efforts, into a broader social media strategy?
One of the things that was really interesting from the survey is how much economic developers generally had a fairly low opinion about blogs, but site selectors consider them to be very valuable. So if you are targeting the site selection, corporate real estate professionals, blogs matter. I think that you need to think about blogging as a company or an organizational strategy, because people want to hear from different people within your organization. And that's because there's different voices. People are interested in what your CEO or your president or director or whatever their title is. They're interested in hearing from them about the vision and what's happening with the organization. But they're also interested in the marketing people, the business development people. I would even say the interns. For the people who are part of this organization, a lot of you are researchers, and for researchers, you're able to provide really interesting blog content. As you see new information about your community, each one of those things can be a blog post. And that's the type of information where you can share good news or combat bad news. And it's exactly the types of information oftentimes that other bloggers or the media wants to pick up. So I would say that people who are involved in research can really contribute a lot of value to blogs.
Okay, so this is a specific question regarding to using Twitter. For Twitter, how do you know which hashtags to use?
Oh, well, one of the ways that you can figure out what hashtags to use is actually to do some searches with hashtags, and then you can see what other people are using. Sometimes, so for example, in economic development, people use different hashtags for that concept. Some people use econ-dev, some use hashtag economic development. Maybe, so I'll share with you some. If you're focusing on corporate real estate, you sometimes see people use hashtag CRE. But if you're focusing on a specific industry target, I would encourage you within Twitter, there is a search box, and just start entering things that you think people might be using, and then sometimes you can see the other ones that they're using. When people are using multiples, you can sometimes find one through the other.
Okay. I saw that you guys mentioned your Facebook add-in that will do some data-driven stuff. So I was just wondering if anybody's interested in accessing that, how do they go about finding that Facebook add-in?
So they can download, again, it's for free. There are two Facebook apps. One is for demographics and the other is for properties. And you can find it at facebook.com/ZoomProspector.
Okay. Well, that is all the questions that I have right now, unless someone wants to sneak in a last second question. With that, I think we'll wrap things up today. Thank you to Eric and Anatalio for the great presentation with a lot of great information, and also for answering all the questions that we had today. And we'll hope to see you all at the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.